Around the year 691 of the Common Era, a text appeared in Syriac. Its author did not sign it. He attributed it instead to Methodius of Olympus, a bishop martyred in 311. The real Methodius had been dead for nearly 4 centuries. The text made a specific claim. A last Roman emperor would arise. He would defeat the enemies of Christendom, march to Jerusalem, and lay his crown before God. Only then would the end of history begin. Within a generation, a Greek translation was in circulation. By the early 8th century, a Latin version had reached Western Europe. By the 15th century, this text had been circulating for nearly 800 years. Constantinople's clergy were still reading it when the Ottoman army arrived outside the walls. The current scholarly edition was produced by W.J. Aerts and G.A.A. Kortekaas in 1998. It appears in the Corpus Scriptorum Christianorum Orientalium and remains the critical standard for the Syriac text. The compositional context was established by Sebastian Brock of Oxford, the leading authority on Syriac Christianity. Brock dates the original to approximately 691 of the Common Era. The setting was not theological abstraction. The Arab conquests of the 7th century had swept through formerly Christian territories. The text was a cognitive response to that loss. 2 versions of this text matter for the historical record. The Syriac original is Brock's philological object. The Greek translation, produced within a generation, is the Byzantine document. Constantinople did not read the Syriac. It read the Greek. The attribution to Methodius of Olympus was not incidental. Methodius had been martyred around 311 of the Common Era. His actual writings were theological works of the early church period. His authority within Christian tradition was retrospective and unimpeachable. A text he supposedly composed 4 centuries before the Arab conquests appeared to describe those conquests in advance. That appearance carried the weight of demonstrated prediction. The mechanism was authority by martyrdom. A prophecy from a genuine martyr occupied different epistemic ground than a contemporary warning. Paul J. Alexander's The Byzantine Apocalyptic Tradition, published in 1985, is the foundational study of the text's reception history. Alexander documents that the Apocalypse was not passively received in Byzantium. It was preached, cited, and deployed by clergy across centuries. It circulated in monasteries and was available to any educated Greek reader. It was not a buried text, it was a living framework. The text established a specific reading of historical trajectory. Ottoman pressure on the Byzantine state was not a refutation of its promises. By the internal logic of the Apocalypse, that pressure was the penultimate chapter. The penultimate chapter in the text's structure preceded miraculous deliverance. The Ottoman advance confirmed the prophecy. What happened to Byzantine strategic thinking when the Ottoman threat, named, documented, growing, passed through this framework? The framework did not produce denial, it produced reframing. The Byzantines recognized the Ottoman threat. The evidence is clear on this point. Orban's cannon offer arrived in Constantinople in 1452. Constantine XI could not pay. The construction of Rumeli Hisari on the Bosphorus was visible from the city. Ottoman siege preparations were documented and known. What the prophetic framework did was convert that recognition into a different kind of knowledge. A recognized threat, processed through the Apocalypse, became confirmation of a scripted sequence. The threat was not denied. It was assigned a role in a narrative whose ending was already written. Alexander argues that Byzantine apocalyptic tradition produced specific emotional and political responses. It was not passive fatalism, it was active reframing. The distinction is analytically significant. Passive fatalism produces inaction because effort seems futile. Active reframing produces a specific type of action, the continuation of prescribed institutional behavior. The response to Ottoman advance was not to do nothing. The response was to do the correct things, the things the framework prescribed. The framework's internal structure had one critical property. Deteriorating conditions confirmed the prophecy rather than refuting it. The worse the siege became, the closer the miraculous reversal must be. An Ottoman breach of the outer wall was not evidence against the last emperor tradition. It was evidence that the penultimate chapter was advancing on schedule. A framework structured this way cannot be broken from inside. The information that would refute it was also the information that confirmed it. No amount of deteriorating evidence could break the framework from within. Runciman documents that Constantinople's clergy maintained the last emperor expectation explicitly during the final weeks of the siege. This is not theoretical. The framework was operative in real time. Clergy continued to preach from within it as the assault progressed day by day. The text composed in 691 was still shaping how the clergy read the siege of 1453. The behavioral evidence is specific. In the weeks of the siege, Constantinople's clergy performed the full liturgical calendar. The scheduled feasts were not abbreviated, they were not suspended. Sphrantzes records the final liturgy at Hagia Sophia on the night of the 28th of May. If miraculous deliverance was approaching, the correct response was to maintain the ritual obligations. Redirecting clergy to wall repair would have been the wrong response. The framework shaped the allocation of effort. Preparation was not suppressed by ignorance. It was suppressed by a framework that made preparation seem redundant. Rome managed a comparable instrument centuries. The Libri Sibyllini, the Sibylline books, were a collection of oracular verses. A priestly college, first the decimviri and later the quindecimviri, held them under Senate authority. The consultation procedure was fixed. After an unusual event or a disaster, the Senate voted to consult the books. The priests announced the prescribed ritual response. The structural feature that matters is when consultation occurred. The books were consulted after disasters, not before them. They were retrospective prescriptive instruments, not prospective warning systems. After G.A.A. in 216, before the Common Era, the Senate consulted the books in 205 before the Common Era. The prescribed response was the introduction of the Magna Mater cult from Phrygia. A military catastrophe produced a ritual remedy. Raymond Bloch documents this as the consistent pattern. Stilicho ordered the books burned in 405 of the Common Era. Their destruction was treated as an omen of decline. The framework absorbed even its own termination. The classic Maya organized historical time in 20-year cycles called catons. Each caton carried a predicted character: drought, warfare, abundance. Ralph Royce's translation of the Book of Chilambalam of Chumayel, published in 1933, preserves this system. Anthony Aveni's Skywatchers of Ancient Mexico documents how the Dresden Codex eclipse tables function within the same framework. Pages 51 through 58 identify danger periods when eclipses could occur. The response was ritual protocol, not contingent strategic action. Environmental signals were interpreted through the Catun framework. If drought came in a Catun predicted to be dry, the drought confirmed the framework. Recalibration was not the prescribed response. Ritual performance was. The Chilam-Balam books were compiled after the Spanish conquest. Maya scribes narrated the conquest within the Catun cycle. The arrival of the Spanish was embedded in the prophetic framework, not outside it. In all three cases, Byzantium, Rome, and Maya, the signal was received. The framework converted it into confirmation, prophecy of deliverance that replaced preparation. This is not a description of prophetic fatalism in general. Fatalistic frameworks predict doom and suppress action because the outcome is fixed. This pattern operates through a different logic. It predicts deliverance, not doom. The promise of miraculous salvation converts the defensive instinct into something unnecessary. Preparation becomes not just futile but incorrect. It is a misreading of where the framework says history stands. The framework prescribes the correct response, and the correct response is to maintain the obligations of a civilization awaiting rescue. The worse conditions become, the more confirmation the framework supplies. The pressure to act decreases as the evidence of danger increases. The man who composed this text in 691 of the Common Era is not known by name. The framework he built outlasted him by 8 centuries. It was still operative in the city it had promised would be saved. New episodes post daily, forensic files every Sunday.